Okay, hello and welcome to week 6 of virtual class. And this week, our topic is going to be costumes and loops. So, our objective for this lesson, you will use costumes and programming loops to create a simple animation. And I talked about this a little bit in the Zoom meeting, but this is probably one of my favorite lessons that we do in Scratch because I love seeing the projects you guys come up with. This week's assignment is going to have a whole lot of creative freedom that you'll be able to take with it. But let's talk about what we're going to be doing today. So, our essential question is, how is animation created in digital projects? And if you think about different types of digital projects, there's animation everywhere. Video games are animated. They have, maybe cuts where they go to, a storyline that's animated for you within a video game, or even just the motion of a character running is animated, right? Um, Even if you think about other types of digital projects, like websites, for example, you see animation there too. So the question is, how do we create those with coding? And that's what you're going to be learning today. So today our goals are first to learn about the basics of animation, so how it works. Then we're going to learn about two new categories of blocks in Scratch. We're going to learn about control blocks, and we're going to learn about looks blocks. And then we'll go through and we will preview this week's assignments, and I'll kind of walk you through the process I would go through to complete it, and then you'll go work on your own. As always, make sure that you complete assignments number 1 and number 2 by next Monday, which for this week, it'll be May 25th. Okay, so let's start off with a quick review. Something that's going to be super important to completing this assignment is making sure that we understand what a costume is. And we talked about this all the way back in, I think it was week 2. And a costume is basically the different appearances of a sprite. Okay, so if you guys look on the screen, you'll see Scratch Cat, right? Scratch's mascot, and we see him in every project whenever we create a new one. And it's one sprite, but if we look, Scratch Cat has 2 different appearances. So if I show you this in the Scratch programming environment, you can see here on my screen, I've got one sprite, okay, Scratch Cat. But if I come over here and click on the Costumes tab, Scratch Cat actually has 2 different costumes or appearances. And you can see that the difference is slight, but it has to do with the position of his arms and his legs. They're in a slightly different position in these 2 costumes, right? It's important that you understand that a sprite is not the same thing as a costume, okay? A sprite is a graphic that we can program, and a costume is the different appearances that that sprite can take on, okay? So for this project that you're going to be working on, your assignment, I'll go over it later, you're only going to have one sprite for this costume, or for this assignment, all right? But a sprite is different from a costume. And if we want to add a sprite, we use this button over here to choose a sprite. And if we want to add a costume, we use this button over here to choose a costume. Very, very important that we understand that for this week. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way and we know about the difference between a costume and a sprite, what a costume is, we've got to understand what animation is. So I'm not going to play this video within the video lesson, but if you're interested, please go to the video lesson post in Google Classroom, and you can click on the presentation and go ahead and click on this link, and it's going to show you a very, very cool video. It actually comes from Disney, and it's a super old video, but it's a great one, and it explains how animation works whenever they created Snow White, which was their first animated feature full-length film. So if you want to pause the video lesson here, you can go over to the presentation, click on the link to watch the video there. One of the things you probably learned from the video is how animation works. So basically, and this is really kind of a great example of this would be like a flip book, but animation works by presenting a sequence of still images in quick succession. So we're showing one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And the viewer who's watching these pictures fly by in order interprets it as being a moving image. Okay. And this is how a lot of media works. Movies work this way with film, right? If you were to look at film, it's just a series of photographs, one after the other, that are, put into a reel and shown in quick succession. And when we as viewers watch it, we interpret it as movement. Cartoons are the same thing, right? So it's really just taking a bunch of images, putting them in a specific order and moving between them really, really quickly in order to create that illusion that something is actually moving. Okay, and this is how animation works, and we can create this pretty easily in Scratch. The first type of block we have to understand is a loop. Okay, and we find loops under the control category in Scratch. This is kind of like a orangish yellow color. Okay, and there are two blocks that we would categorize as being loops, and they are blocks that will execute or run a section of code several times. Okay, we can take a section of code and we can have it repeat a certain number of times that we specify, okay, by typing in different numbers in this box, or we can have a section of code repeat forever, meaning we can just have it go again and again and again and again and again until we stop the program. Okay, so we have two different options for loops, and I'll show those to you in Scratch. Okay, and again, we'll find those under the control category, and you'll see we've got it here, the repeat a certain number of times, and the forever block. Okay, these blocks, these loops, are a block shape that we talked about way back in week 2 that are called C blocks. And they're called C blocks because they're shaped like the letter C. These blocks wrap around a section of code. Okay, so for example, let's say that I wanted Scratchcat to turn 15 degrees, but I wanted him to do it a certain number of times. Like, let's say I wanted him to turn 15 degrees 10 times, right? If I put the repeat block around it, you'll see that instead of just turning 15 degrees, which is a very small movement, he actually turns quite a bit more because we're telling him to do that 10 times, okay? So it wraps around a section of code. Here, I've only got one block, but we could put several blocks here, right? There really is no limit. So now I'm telling him to 10 times repeat, turning 15 degrees and moving 10 steps. Okay. So wraps around a section of code. And then, of course, if we wanted to, well, actually, I don't know what'll happen if we tell him to do it forever. There we go. If we tell him to do it forever, he'll just spin around and around and around and around and around until I actually tell him to stop by clicking the stop sign up here. Okay, so those are your loop blocks. Again, we find them under the control category, and they're C blocks that wrap around a section of code. Okay. Those are important to understand for animation. Let's talk about what else? Wait blocks. So your wait block is also found under the control category. And it says wait blank seconds. And again, there's a bubble here where you can change that number to however many seconds you like. A wait block is super useful, especially for this assignment, because it allows you to create a sequence of events rather than everything happening at once. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I'm in Scratch, let me go back here to motion, okay? Let's say that in Scratch, I want Scratchcat to turn 15 degrees to the right. So I want him to rotate to the right. And then I want him to turn around and I want him to rotate to the left. All right, and then let's say I want him to do that when the green flag is clicked. Okay, I'm going to click the green flag and I want you to observe what happens. Okay, you'll notice I'm clicking the green flag and absolutely nothing is happening. Okay, this is not because Scratchcat is ignoring this script. He's not ignoring it. He's doing what I told him to do. But we have to look carefully at what we told him to do. We said that when the green flag is clicked, we turned 15 degrees to the right and turned 15 degrees to the left. Okay, what Scratchcat is doing is he's doing that, but he's doing both of these commands at the same time, right? And when he's turning 15 degrees to the right and then turning 15 degrees to the left, because they're happening at the same time, they're canceling each other out, and it looks like Scratchcat is doing nothing. okay? So what we have here are two commands happening at the same time, all right? And oftentimes this is going to cause us problems, which is why we have what's called a wait block under the control category. So by putting this wait block in between those two commands, we can create a sequence. We're basically telling him when the green flag is clicked, turn to the right 15 degrees, wait, and then turn to the left 15 degrees. So now whenever I click the green flag, look at what Scratchcat does. Okay, he's actually turning 15 degrees to the right, waiting, and then turning 15 degrees to the left. So that wait block is very, very powerful because it allows you to create a sequence instead of everything happening all at one time. Something else the wait block allows you to do is it allows you to adjust the timing in a script. Okay, so it defaults as 1 second. You wait 1 second, but we can change that block to any number that we would like. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say that I decided that his wait was too long. I wanted it to be a little bit shorter. Instead of that being 1 second, I could make it 0.5 seconds, half a second. Okay. Or I could make it longer. Let's say I wanted it to be 2 seconds. I can change it to 2 seconds. Okay, so the wait block can allow us to create a sequence. It can also allow us to adjust timing in a script. Very, very useful, especially for animation. Okay, so now that we have talked about our control blocks, let's talk about another category of blocks called looks blocks. Looks blocks, which are purple in color, are blocks that deal with the appearances of sprites and backdrops. Okay, and there's two looks blocks that you're going to be using for this week's assignments, and they deal with costumes. Okay, so if we go back to Scratch, let's find those looks blocks. All right, the purple category, and as I said, these ones all deal with appearances of sprites. So you can see at the top there are some blocks that have a sprite say or think certain things. But the ones we're really concerned with are the ones that we can also change size, change color. We have different effects that we can use, show and hide sprites. We can change the order that they are in layers. There's all kinds of stuff to experiment with. But for this week, the ones you're really concerned with are these two blocks, the switch costume and the next costume. Okay, so if we go and look at our costumes, remember Scratchcat has those two costumes. Costume 1, where his legs are out in front of him, and costume 2, where they're tucked up underneath him. So what I can do is I can use a block to tell him to switch to a certain costume. So let's say I want him to go to costume 1. Okay, I can use this block to tell him to do it. Or if I just want him to go to the next costume in the list, he'll switch back and forth between all of his costumes. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So these two blocks allow you to switch between those costumes. All right. And if you look, if we told him to rapidly switch between his costumes, it animates him, right? It makes him look kind of like he's walking. If I wanted him to do this in a script, I could actually tell, let's say I want him to do that, look like he's walking whenever I click the green flag. I could say when the green flag is clicked, I could put a loop in here and I could say forever switch to the next costume. Okay. And when I click my green flag, he does it, but he's super, super fast. What can I use to slow that down? Well, I could use a wait block, right? And I could stick that in there. And now it gives the appearance that he's, walking. And again, I might want to adjust the timing. Maybe I want it to be a little bit faster, half a second. Or even slower than that, I could say 0.2 seconds. Okay, and it gives the appearance that Scratchcat is walking. All right, this is how we create animation and digital projects using coding, like in Scratch. Okay, and this is basically what your assignment is going to deal with this week. So we're going to talk about what your assignment is, and then I'll demo it for you. So Scratch assignment number 3 is going to be to create a short stick figure animation using costumes, control blocks, loops, and looks blocks, change costume blocks. The project should include at least 10 different costumes of a single sprite. It should include one script that makes your animation work, and it should start when the green flag is clicked, okay? So I have actually a checklist for this assignment. That's kind of the basic instructions, but let's go ahead and look in Google Classroom at the instructions here, and I'll walk you through a fast stick figure animation and show you some tips and tricks that'll make it a little bit easier for you. I do want to say assignment number 1 this week is, of course, your 5-question multiple choice quiz on what was covered in our presentation, so make sure you do that. And now let's talk about assignment number 2. It says, after watching this week's video lesson, use the instructions and checklist below to create a simple stick figure animation using blocks from the controls and looks categories. When done, please be sure to share your project before copying the link that you will add to this assignment before turning it in. And for help turning your assignment in, please see the video under assignment number 2 in week 4. Okay, so you'll see a video here that'll help you turn it in case you forgot how to do that. Let's look at your checklist. Okay, so this is a short one this time. And really, how impressive your assignment ends up really has to do with how much time you're willing to invest in it. I've seen some kids just kind of throw something together pretty quickly just to show they understand the concepts, but I've seen others spend multiple days on their project really making it something great. So what you see in this checklist is the minimum, but you can always do extra to make your project more if you're interested in this and you would like to. Okay, so as always, we're going to create a new project in Scratch, and we're going to title it first name, last name, number 3. So I'm actually going to go through this as we go. So I'm going to title it first name, last name, number 3. Please make sure that you title it correctly. The next thing is you're going to delete Scratchcat and add a stick figure sprite to your project. Okay, so if we go back here, I'm going to delete Scratchcat, and I'm going to add a new sprite to my project, and I'm going to make it a stick figure that I create. So remember, this is the button we use to choose a sprite, and it's going to be a stick figure. I'll give you a spoiler. You're not going to find one in the library. So for this assignment, you're going to have to paint your own. Okay, now I have told you in the past that if you're painting sprites, you want to convert to bitmap mode, that it's just generally going to be easier for you. This assignment that's not going to be the case. And you'll understand why once you see how you can use the tools in vector mode, but you do not want to click this button this time, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a simple stick figure. I want my stick figure to be a simple black and white stick figure. So I'm going to make the fill empty. All right, that's this one right here, the box with the red line through it. And I'm going to make the outline black. I like that. I'm going to make my line a little bit thicker. Maybe I'll make it 20. And I'm going to start off by using the circle tool to create the head for my stick figure. Okay. And then I'm going to use the straight line tool to create the body for my stick figure. So there's his body. Put his legs here. And his arms. There we go, a simple stick figure, right? So here is my stick figure sprite. Let's look at what the next instruction says. It says, create at least 10 different costumes for your stick figure sprite. At least 10 different costumes. So that means that I can do more than 10, but the minimum I can do are 10 different costumes, okay? I can't just make 2 costumes and copy and paste them a bunch of times, but I need to make 10 different costumes for my stick figure sprite. So what you're going to be doing here is you're going to be creating a bunch of still images that you can show in succession to create movement, okay? So first thing you have to think about is, what do you want your stick figure to do? Maybe you want your stick figure to do a little dance, or maybe you want your stick figure to clap its hands or touch its toes, or maybe you want it to throw a basketball. The possibilities are endless. But if you're really confused by this assignment, I suggest you keep it to something really, really simple. So I'm going to have my guy do a little dance, okay? Pretty basic and simple. Now, the reason why I told you not to convert to bitmap mode, but to stay in vector mode, are these 2 tools up here. You've got your select tool and you have your reshape tool. So perhaps for my dance, I want my little stick figure to start off by waving his arms from side to side. Look at what I can do. If I click on my select tool, okay, over here, I can click on any part of my stick figure's body, and I can use the handles here, or sorry, the reshape tool, not the select tool. I want to use the reshape tool. I can click on any part of my stick figure's body, and I can actually use these dots at the end to move it. Now, if I click on the line, it's going to create a joint there and create a new dot. Sometimes you might want that if you want, a sprite to bend an arm, a leg, or a part of their body, but I don't necessarily want that. So if you ever make a mistake and you accidentally click off of the dot, you can also hit undo. Okay, so see, I just did it there. I accidentally created a little joint, and I just want to click on the dot. And if you are having trouble with it, just keep clicking undo until it goes back to the way you want it. So I'm going to start off by moving his arms a little bit like that, okay? And again, I'm going to have them waving back and forth. So now that I've created my second, or that I have my arms in the position where I want them whenever he starts, I think I'm going to move it over like this, right? Instead of creating a whole new stick figure for my second costume, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on my first costume and I'm going to duplicate it. Okay, so now I have an exact copy. What this allows me to do is I can start from this one and I can make a really small movement with his arms. Okay, but the rest of his body is going to stay in the same place. Because if I created a new stick figure, he would just kind of jump all around the screen and it wouldn't look very good. Okay, and I'm going to continue doing this. I'm going to duplicate that last costume again. I'm going to use my reshape tool and I'm going to slightly move his arms again. Duplicate it again. Move his arms a little bit more. Okay, and you can see already I've got 4 costumes. This will be my 5th. So you can see that it looks like it's a lot of work, but in reality, creating 10 costumes is really easy. Now, if you move something by accident, you click on it and you move it by accident, all you have to do is click undo. Okay, so now I'm going to move his arms back the other way. Duplicating my costume, moving them a little bit further. Duplicating it again. And I'm just going to keep going with this. Until I have my 10 costumes. Okay. And we got one more. Okay. So now I've got 10 costumes. And if we look at all of these still images or costumes I've created, he's making small movements in each of them, right? So my job now, let's look at our checklist. Now that I've created 10 different costumes, I'm going to write a script that begins when the green flag is clicked to animate your stick figure by switching between the costumes, okay? So remember what we learned about, the blocks we learned about today, okay? So we wanted to start when the green flag is clicked, but we want to write a script that will switch between those costumes in a sequence rapidly in order to give the illusion, right, that our stick figure is actually moving. So we can use a repeat block. We could use a forever block. I'm going to use the forever block. We're going to go to our looks category and we want him to switch to the next costume because I have all of my costumes in order. I could also include a bunch of these blocks that tell him to start with costume 1 and then go to costume 2 and costume 3, etc., etc. But I'm just going to use the next costume block and I'm going to click the green flag to see what happens. Okay, so you can see my stick figure is waving his arms back and forth. If I think that it's too fast and I'd like to slow it down a little bit, I can go back to control and I can use my wait block to slow it down a little bit. right? Maybe that's too slow. So again, you just want to adjust your project until it looks right to you. I think that looks pretty good, right? So that's a basic stick figure animation. However, I don't want you to feel like you have to make it super simple. This is something where you have a lot of creativity. Um, and I would love to next week maybe create a place where I can drop some of my favorite projects that were turned in the week prior. So if you spend a little bit of time on it, I'll put you in a gallery so that my other students and all my other mods can kind of look at your work. I can show you that in the past, some of the other projects I've made or I've gotten, can try to find them maybe to inspire you, maybe some more complicated projects. Okay, so yeah, for example, this one is a little stick figure who's flossing, which I know is a very cool dance that you guys probably still do all the time, right? Okay, so here's a little stick figure that's doing who's doing the floss or flossing, right? Okay. Last semester, I had kids because TikTok was starting to become more popular. Kids were doing TikTok dances with their little stick figures. And if you look here, you can even do things like, change the facial expression like you see in this one. Lots of cool options for ways that you can personalize your project. But that's it. That's basically it. Of course, the last thing you want to make sure you do is you share your project and copy the link to attach it to this assignment. So always make sure that once you do your assignment, you click that share button before you copy your link. Make sure you add it to the assignment and get it turned in before Monday. So that's basically it for this week. If you have questions, reach out to me via email, and I will get back to you and try to help you the best I can. Use this video as a resource. If you need to come back and review it, that's totally cool. And if all is well, I guess I'll see you next week.